Like many boys who grew up in the country, I spent most days outside, wearing a coonskin cap, reenacting the adventures of Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett with my brothers.
Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier.
It's fair to say that I idolized these heroes of the American frontier, and for much of my early life I longed to follow in their footsteps. It didn't take long for me to figure out that the demand for frontiersmen isn't as high as it used to be. As disappointing as that is, I'm excited to share an adventure with you in which I was able to literally follow the footsteps of a frontier legend and find a message he left hidden in the backwoods of Ohio. Louis Wetzel was born in the 1700s, the son of a German immigrant. His family moved to what is now the northern panhandle of West Virginia in 1770. At the time, the area was quite remote, and settlers were in constant conflict with Native American tribes. In 1777, Wyandotte Indians kidnapped Louis, who was 13, and his younger brother Jacob, who was 11. The two boys were working in the fields with their father and their older brother. About mid-morning, their father sent Louis and Jacob back to the cabin to check on some drying venison. He'd also neglected to bring his gun with him into the fields and asked the boys to retrieve it. As Louis and Jacob left the cabin to return to the field, they were attacked by the Indians. Louis was hit across the chest by a gunshot as he opened the door. The shot tore away a piece of his sternum. The Indians wasted no time capturing the boys and ransacking the cabin. With their work completed, they retreated to the forest, driving Louis and Jacob ahead of them. Their father and older brother quickly found out what had happened to the boys, but the Indians had stolen their firearms, making pursuit a hopeless endeavor. They ran to a nearby fort to get help, but by the time they returned, the trail had gone cold. The Indians pushed Louis and Jacob hard for 3 days. Louis was in excruciating pain from his bullet wound, but he did his best to stay strong for his little brother. On the third night, the Indians relaxed their guard and took away the boys' shoes to discourage them from running away. Louis and Jacob escaped anyway, but once out of camp, they realized that they needed footwear because they'd have to stay off of main trails to avoid being captured again. Louis told Jacob to wait for him, and he snuck back into camp and stole 2 pairs of moccasins that were drying by the fire. He even managed to take back his father's rifle and powder horn while he was at it. The Wetzel boys avoided recapture 3 times on their journey home. They even had to craft a makeshift boat out of logs to cross to an island in the middle of the Ohio River at one point. They made it home safely, but the harrowing experience was a formative moment in Louis Wetzel's life. Over the next few years, Louis honed himself into a master frontiersman. He became very proficient at making war on the Indians using their own fighting style. According to legend, he practiced shooting so much that he could hit anything he could see with a single shot. He also became an expert with the knife and tomahawk. Louis was a natural athlete and was so quick and agile running through the woods that no one could catch him. Louis's father taught him the skill that would make him a legend: loading, priming, and shooting a long rifle while running at full speed through the woods. Louis spent much of his adult life in the hills of western Virginia and Ohio, working as an Indian fighter. He preferred to operate alone. His skill in guerrilla warfare made him a hero among the frontier settlers. He rescued people and horses stolen by Indians. But his knack for violence also led to darker deeds, including the cold-blooded murder of a Seneca leader who was working toward peace with the settlers. This crime put Wetzel on the wrong side of the law, but he ultimately went untried due to his popularity among the settlers. Without a doubt, Wetzel was a controversial figure, even in his own time. Several years ago, I learned that Louis Wetzel had carved a message on a rock somewhere in Morgan County, Ohio. I started researching it and found that many people had seen the rock over the years, but it wasn't marked, it wasn't in a park, and it was well off the beaten path. I could find nothing about the rock's actual location. I tried using Google Earth to narrow the search by estimating the rock's proximity to the Muskingum River and the Morgan County line. Finally, I found a phone number of a house that was near the location and called to see if the owner knew anything about the rock. It proved to be a dead end.
The number you have reached has been disconnected. For directory assistance information, you may dial 411 or your directory service provider.
With no way to confirm the location, I put the project on the back burner. A few months passed. My schooling program assigned me to work for a few weeks in a town about a half hour north from my estimated location for the Wetzel Rock. I showed up for work one day and found out I wasn't needed due to a staff meeting. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. I drove south along the Muskingum River, knowing that it was highly unlikely that I'd find the rock. All I had to go on was guesswork. I was wearing scrubs, which weren't ideal for hiking through the woods, but the weather was beautiful, and in my experience, some of the best adventures happen on the spur of the moment. I was also curious to see what kind of message Louis Wetzel had left behind. My trip took me to the town of Blue Rock, Ohio, and down gravel roads, past cornfields and barns, until I came to a dead-end lane. It was time to see if my guesswork was going to pay off. I could see a house at the end of the lane and a man working in his yard, but as I drew closer, I had concerns about whether or not I'd be welcome. The owner turned out to be a really nice guy. When I told him what I was looking for, he said I'd come to the right place. The Wetzel Rock was on his property. He gave me permission to hike down on the holler where it was, but warned me that it wasn't easy going, and that the rock was easy to miss. He said a bank above the rock had been sagging for the past few years, and for all he knew, the rock might have been buried in a mudslide. I decided to take my chances anyway.
Well, I was in luck today. The owner of the property here that the Wetzel Rock is on was home, and he kind of gave me some directions on how to get back through the woods here to see it. Apparently it's pretty hard to find, and they've marked the trail with some ribbons. He said that was a couple years ago though, so he doesn't know if the ribbons are still up, but I'll see if I can find it.
The first ribbon was difficult to find. It turns out it had fallen from where it was tied and was laying on the ground. And the second ribbon wasn't much easier. After that, the ribbons were easier to find. Well, for the most part.
Thought I lost the trail there for a minute. Then I saw this guy. It's like Hansel and Gretel following the breadcrumbs.
The trail was pretty overgrown, and what I thought would be a 15-minute hike quickly turned into a half hour.
So when you run a blog in your spare time, the good news is you always have some project that you can be working on in your spare time. The bad news is you don't always know when you're going to get the spare time, which is why I am going on a pretty vigorous hike here in my scrubs. Didn't have the opportunity to prepare to dress for this hike, but we're not going to let that stop me from taking advantage of spare time when it rolls around. All right, so I just crossed this creek bed down here behind me. I got a logging road that goes that way, and I got a logging road that goes up the hill this way, and no ribbon. It's time to do a little exploring, see if we can find the next ribbon along the trail. I think I see something pink up here in the trees. Good news, folks, I'm still not lost. I'm up on this hill with all of these boulders on it right now. It's kind of a change in the landscape, so I've got to think that the rock is somewhere around here. We got to be getting close. Although you can see with the moss over everything, it's sure going to be hard to spot. I found it, guys. Right here behind me. Didn't think I was going to. I almost walked right past it. And I noticed the writing on it. Let's go have a look. Here's his name. Louis Wetzel. And over here is his message.
Louis Wetzel's message was to the settlers that followed him into the Ohio River Valley. "Enjoy the peace which I have prepared for you," he wrote. He also carved what I assumed to be his birth date in the rock, 1752. In addition to that, there were other words and dates carved into the rock by people who had discovered it over the years, some of them dating from 1885. As I studied the rock, I pondered the meaning behind Wetzel's message. "Enjoy the peace which I have prepared for you." It's clear that in his mind he was on a mission to prepare this frontier region as a peaceful place for settlers to live, and like many people of his era, he believed it was necessary to drive out the native Indian tribes to accomplish this. It's interesting that he viewed himself as leaving behind peace for others. He didn't include himself. I wonder if he felt the weight of the violent life he'd lived and thought himself incapable of settling down to enjoy peace. My trip to this rock was a special experience. There's no maintained trails leading to it. It's not part of a government-owned park, and that's what makes it unique. It's a symbol of the dark and bloody side of American westward expansion, and yet also shows that one of the most violent men involved in the conflict was thinking of peace. It's a chance to connect with the irony of raw history in the middle of an untamed, unnamed holler. I hope you enjoyed this story. For more like it, head on over to theweeklyholler.com and sign up for our free email newsletter.